It is Wednesday night. You know what that means. It's the Better Sports Network Dynasty Nerds mashup. The best thing you could be doing on a Wednesday night is hanging out right here. Look, it is getting down to that nitty gritty end of the year stuff. Your fantasy football teams, some of them are looking great. Some of them are looking like they might be in peril. Some of them are right on the cusp of, are you a playoff team? Are you not a playoff team? These next few weeks are going to say a lot about your fantasy football team's future. So all kinds of good stuff to talk about today. I love this time of year. It's a very fun time of year. We've got Thanksgiving coming up. The Thanksgiving tomorrow. Tomorrow we get to sit down. We get to watch 3 football games. Then we have a Black Friday football game. So we have football all throughout the weekend this weekend. So a lot of fun things in store. If you don't know, I am your host, Garret Price, and we've got a great show planned for tonight. Tristan Cook is going to be joining us. He's joined us several times before. Great guy, knows a lot of stuff, both about the NFL and the college football game. But we're going to be talking tonight about trade pieces for those teams looking to make a push and win a ship. We're going to be talking about those types of guys tonight. And then, of course, in between, we're always taking those trade questions, those start-sit questions, all of that kind of stuff right in that break there. We're going to be taking those there. And then at the end, we've got Dennis Bennett jumping on with us. He's going to join us, and we've got some mock drafts to talk about. That's right, the 2024 class. We're already starting to look at what those rookie mock drafts are going to look like. We did one over at Dynasty Nerds. Dennis Bennett is going to be there to talk about it. Raymond says, the 2 I'm in are looking good, but I need a win to win my division and possibly a bye. Happy holidays. Happy holidays to you as well, Raymond. Okay, well, my guy Tristan Cook is here, so let's go ahead and bring him on, and let's start talking a little trade skis here. Tristan, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. You can find him at the Tristan Cook. I said the louder because it is in all caps.
I appreciate it. That's the goal.
Yeah, because you're kind of supposed to yell that, right? A little bit, or at least higher tone of voice.
Yeah, I think there's a college that is all about pronouncing the. I
Yeah.
can't quite put my finger on which one it
I think
might
we
be.
even pronounce it the
Oh, the
Ohio State
interesting.
University. Yeah.
Oh, is that? I've heard of that school
Yeah,
before.
yeah. They got a pretty big game this weekend, actually.
They do. Hopefully, they came out with a whole new set of signs just in case. Allegedly, in case they needed to change them up for no particular reason.
I would have one guy assigned to doing the exact same signs, which means something completely different now, but do the exact same signs just for fun.
Oh, absolutely. I would have a lot of fun with it. But
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right. Well, we do have a lot of good stuff in store. But before we get into the serious stuff, the important stuff, Tristan, Thanksgiving tomorrow. Do you have any little Thanksgiving things that you like to do, little traditions, places you go, things you eat, things you do? Obviously, you're probably going to be watching at least a little bit of football.
Yeah, my favorite part about Thanksgiving and memory of every Thanksgiving is watching football. That's my favorite part of it, usually involving watching the Lions lose. But this
Actually good
year,
now.
yeah, this year and now they are good. So I'm hoping that can change for them. But that is one of my traditions: is just sitting in front of the TV watching football until it's time to stuff my face
There you go.
with food and then dessert, and then hopefully stay awake while the last game is on.
Absolutely. Now, do you you go to your parents' place? Do people come to you? Like, what's the usual setup for you?
So usually it's either like to my mom's or to a cousin's or something with all my family. This year is a little different because my puppy is sick, so we are in
Oh,
quarantine. And yeah, just going to be hanging out with a puppy that has kennel cough, and my girlfriend just broke her foot and dislocated her shoulder, so we're just going to be hanging out, watching some football and sitting on the couch.
broke her foot and dislocated her shoulder. Those are two opposite ends of the bodies. What
Uh,
happened?
It was all one side. It was it took a nasty spill on some slippery ground. So
Oh no.
that'll get you.
So yeah, it does sound like it's going to be a little bit of a different.
It will be. I'm still going to get a nice home cooked meal delivery from leftovers. So I'll
There
still
you
get
go.
to have a Thanksgiving meal, and I'll still be sitting on the couch watching football. Just be a slightly different setup than normal.
Okay, if we're being 100% honest, yes, you're going to miss the family a little bit,
Eh.
but the peace and quiet to just watch football isn't the worst thing in the world.
Oh no, I'm like, yeah, it's always nice to be around family until it's a little much and you want to just sit and watch football.
Yeah.
So I'm not too upset about the fact that my day will consist of watching football in a little bit of a calmer atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, awesome, man. Well, let's real quickly, because you are also a college guy. Let's talk
Yeah,
about some of the biggest games of the weekend. And I don't think that there is a bigger one than the Ohio State Michigan game, the number 2 team versus the number 3 team in the country. Uh, any thoughts, any predictions, anything you're keeping an eye on in that game?
yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I'm eager to watch is to see if JJ McCarthy can actually be allowed to throw the ball.
Mhm.
More than 8 times or whatever it was against Penn State a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it was pretty
Uh,
bad.
he was kind of, one of the names for the QB3 in the class coming into the year. He hasn't played poorly, but he hadn't played anybody tough. And then he got a chance against Penn State, and they ran it. I think it was like 32 straight times to end the game, and he only attempted 8 passes. So there aren't many questions that were answered from that, and how he like kind of plays against better competition or stuff like that. So I'm eager to see both if they let him throw and if he does, how well he does.
Yeah, no, that'll be a very interesting one as well. I'm keeping an eye on Travion Henderson. He started the year off pretty slow and, coming off his sophomore campaign, which was a little bit underwhelming, but has dealt with some injuries, just a lot of nagging things. Nothing big ever, just a lot of nagging injuries. Looked fantastic as a true freshman. These past 3 weeks, he's started to look like his old self again. This is
Yeah,
kind of a big test for him here. If he can put the offense on his back, so to speak, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. will be involved as well. But if he can put the offense on his back a little bit, I think that does a lot for his NFL draft stock. So really interested to see what happens there.
yeah, I think he's the other one that I will be like when Ohio State has the ball. That's the main thing I'll be paying attention to. We know Marvin Harrison Jr. is really good.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about that. Emeka Buka, I think he's supposed to be back.
Yeah.
He's also very good. There's a little bit there to just kind of dive into because he's missed a lot of this season.
Yeah.
But yeah, Henderson is the guy to watch for Ohio State because, as you said, he had a great freshman year and then he kind of just underwhelmed.
Yeah.
He was my running back one for the class for most of after his freshman year, and then kind of 1A and 1B with Braylon Allen, but neither of them have particularly looked good most of last year and most in the first part of this year. So the Michigan defense is about as good as you'll get in college football. So if Henderson looks really good and can kind of show that the last few weeks are more of what to be expected than just kind of a flashback to what we saw as a freshman, I think it'd do a lot for his draft stock. So yeah, I'll be watching that one as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another game that's a pretty big one, Oregon State. This week we've got number 6 versus number 16, and we've got some, potential NFL quarterbacks, a guy that might even go first round. Anything you want to touch on there real quick?
Yeah, I was not a big believer in Bo Nix. He's kind of continued to surprise or just continue to put up good numbers and make a bit, NFL throws and kind of making people draft him. I think he's going to end up being drafted. Like my guess is it won't be a first round pick. I think he might be like day 2, somewhere in there, probably on the early part of it. But I also have been continuously kind of proven wrong by his performances to date. So I'm probably a little lower on him than the majority of people, because I've seen him mocked in like the top 10 in some mock drafts here or there. So it wouldn't shock me if he went that high. The Oregon State defense as well is really good, and rivalry games are always a bit of a wild card. So that's an interesting one. The next most interesting player for me is Franklin. Excuse me,
The wide receiver.
the wide receiver for Oregon. He's kind of a slender build compared to the majority of the top receivers in this class. They're all kind of like 6'3", 6'4" ish. 210, 220, and up. And he's a little bit more of a slender build compared to that, and so he might stand out in a class where he otherwise wouldn't, because he's just a different type of receiver than a lot of the ones that are projected to go in the first round or so. But yeah, that'll be an interesting kind of duo to see how they take on Oregon State, and just how the pre-draft process plays out for them.
Yeah. Last guy I wanted to mention in that game real quickly, DJ, and I still, after all these years, I still don't pronounce his last name correctly.
Uyangalele.
Okay. Yes.
DJU is, that's the
Yeah,
easiest
that's
way
easy.
to go.
He's salvaged his draft stock a little bit. I know he was very highly sought after early on, thought to be this, the great predecessor of Trevor Lawrence, and really kind of disappointed, ended up transferring. Where do you think he goes if he enters the draft this year, which I think he kind of has to? But with COVID stuff, it always, I never know for sure. But
Yeah.
what do you think of him?
I am not sure if he has another year of eligibility either. So I think he is out. And like you said, there's the uncertainty with the COVID year and all of that. But I think that if he can get into the end of the third round, I would be pretty surprised. I think he's more likely going to be an early day 3 quarterback. It's tough. He was, as you said, he was I think the number 1 quarterback recruit in his class. Just one of the top handful of players in the entire country in his class. Never really lived up to it. He looked good the one year that Trevor Lawrence missed a couple games. I think that was 2020. When I think Lawrence missed a game for COVID and maybe injury or something or other. And then he just kind of fell flat on his face. So he's definitely recouped some of that stock, but I don't know. He's going to probably look pretty good in, a t-shirt and shorts throwing the ball. You might get a little bit of a bump from that, but he hasn't put a lot of good football tape out there, and I think it's going to keep him from getting drafted anywhere before the third day. But I mean, like I said, it's possible he'll sneak into the end of the third round, but I think that would be about as rich as I would expect him to go. But we've seen quarterbacks get drafted there and end up, being very valuable, solid NFL quarterbacks. I think the most recent couple would be Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, and then obviously the Brock Purdy man himself being the last pick in the draft. But yeah, I think it's not impossible to be drafted there and kind of end up being something in the NFL. But I think the odds are probably stacked against him at this point.
All right, last college thing, and then I promise we are getting to contender guys that we're buying on championship teams. But you are a Colorado fan. I think everyone was a Colorado fan for about 3 or 4 weeks there. The wheels have kind of come off. What's your thoughts on just everything there? Because I think they probably overachieved early on, and now they're probably underachieving. They're probably somewhere in between those two teams. What are your thoughts on Coach Prime, that whole situation, and of course Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, I think you nailed it pretty squarely on the head there. The fact that they were 3-0 after their first 3 games, I think shocked everyone, myself included. I was trying to contain my excitement, but it's hard not to be when you've won, I think, 3 games in the previous 2 years. So he has brought a lot of excitement. I think the Buffs are significantly better, but they definitely overachieved early in the season. I think if you told anybody that the Buffs would get to 4 wins this year and you didn't tell them how, they'd be pretty happy with that. But the way that they did, I think there's a bit of disappointment kind of in the air for Buffs fans. I mean, they should have won a few of the games, in my opinion. Anytime you're up 29-0, I think it was at half against Stanford. I was at that game, freezing and getting more and more annoyed as they gave that one away. But yeah, like overall, I'm really happy. I think this might actually be a blessing in disguise because the excitement around Coach Prime and maybe going to a bigger school immediately after 1 year has died down. I'd like to think that he wants to stay at Colorado for a long time, but you know, it's hard to compete with some of those rumored contracts that can be out there.
Sure.
So if this keeps him around for 2 more years, I would be stoked, and anything beyond that is just kind of gravy. And yeah, I think Shador is coming back almost certainly. I think Prime has said that as much.
Yeah.
I've seen him as like QB3 but everybody just expects him to return, and so I think it's best for him. I think the Buffs could maybe be a bowl team next year. I think that would be the expectations. I think that going from 4 to 6 wins with one more year of Coach Prime's players, and everybody being healthy, hopefully for the whole year, and just kind of getting some linemen that can block and can attack the quarterback on the defensive side. It should be nothing but good news for the Buffs and Buffs fans. And yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of some excitement that is a little tarnished by the last stretch of games, but
Sure.
overall, it's been an improvement.
All right. Can I get what is that? Robert saying Bawitaba?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I wondered if that was a Colorado thing I wasn't aware of.
If it is, I'm also unaware of it. So.
All right. I would love to know, one, how to pronounce that. Bawitaba, I'm guessing. And two, what it means. Because I could have just said something real offensive on the air. Oh, Heavy T saying, I'm pretty sure it's a Kid Rock reference.
There we are.
That makes sense. All right. What's up, Robert? Okay. All right. Let's get into some of these buys that we want to look at if we are a contending team. And there's some big names, obviously, that you can go out there and get. And I'm curious to see what names that you kind of put out there, because yes, you can go out there and get the real expensive guys, but there's usually some guys that maybe are a little bit older, less desirable for these middle of the road teams that you can get, and they might only have 1-2 years left under them, but they're still valuable. Now that I'm not limiting our buys just to that, but those are some of the least expensive ones that you can get at times. So I'm curious to see what you have. Tristan, give me the first guy that you think might be a good buy for a contending team right now.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple at each position, or multiple at some, kind of a handful of different players. But the first one that I will go with is Amari Cooper. I think that he's closer to that last thing that you were saying, maybe 1 more year, maybe 2 if you're lucky. But I think the cost is incredibly low. I didn't check any trade browser trades just beforehand. I probably should have, but I think that you can get him relatively cheap. I think, especially if he's not on a contending team. If the team that has Cooper is kind of middle of the pack and isn't going to probably make the playoffs, and you are, a player or two away at wide receiver, I think Amari Cooper could be had. I mean, I'd pay a second-round pick for him as a contending team easily, and I imagine you could get that done, at least in some leagues. Maybe you'd have to go a little richer than that, but I don't think that. I don't think that if you were a non-competitive team and somebody offered you a second for Amari Cooper, that you would be, scoff at that idea.
Yeah, no, I think Amari Cooper's a good one, and especially with Deshaun Watson being out, a lot of people are going to completely discount him altogether. And so the price has never been lower, and it'll probably go up again next year, even though he'll be older. It'll be more expensive once again, just because Deshaun Watson's back. So that's a great one to look at. A guy that I'm going to go with here, I'm going to go with Ramondre Stevenson. There's a few. What's that?
Said he's your guy.
He is, I've liked him quite a bit over the years, and part of it is the schedule for Ramondre Stevenson. One, I think he's another guy that he's had a very meh season overall. He's had some decent weeks, he's had some bummers, but overall, it's been very lukewarm season. But his end of the season schedule is pretty nice. Has one of the top 10 easiest schedules down the road, and specifically in the semis and in the championship game, two bottom 10 run defenses as far as fantasy points go against the running back, Denver and Buffalo in those two games. So two teams that you can run the football against, two teams that sadly, it's true. And he is a guy that catches passes out of the backfield too. So even if you're looking at Buffalo saying, well, they might get down real quick. Well, that's all right. He can catch passes as well. So he's a guy that I think is fairly inexpensive, and he might have a little bit longer shelf life than some of these other guys that we might be talking about. So I'm looking at Ramondre Stevenson. What do you think about that, Tristan?
I like that one. I think that the biggest question I have there is the quarterback situation and how that might affect his production. But I think if you even if Zappy comes in or if it's kind of back and forth, as long as they're not playing worse than they are now, I think that's a solid pick. My running back was David Montgomery. Which a little different scenario, but he plays for the Lions, and I think the hype around Gibbs really depressed his value, and he's kind of taken over that Jamal Williams role, and pardon the pun, but ran with it. They want to smash the ball over and over, and keep Goff throwing, I think, shorter, higher percentage passes, running when they can, finishing the game out with runs, all of that. And David Montgomery is much more the power back than Jahmyr Gibbs. So I think that because of Gibbs' presence, it's also kind of depressed the interest in Montgomery long term as well as short term. But if you're looking for a running back in the short term, I think he's a huge buy for me. But if you're looking for a little longer term, he's still young enough. He still has the opportunity to be kind of that short yardage touchdown guy, which definitely holds value. Maybe not the highest value long term, but I think right now he'd be a really good addition to a team that needs a running back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a fairly inexpensive one, and you're right. With Jahmyr Gibbs coming back and playing the way that he has over the past 4 weeks, he's been a top 5 running back each and every week that he's been back. So Gibbs has been absolutely fantastic returning from injury there. So that has depressed that value a little bit, but Montgomery still just seems to always find the end zone. That's what Detroit does. They have a guy that is their goal line back, and when they get near that goal line, more often than not, that guy's getting the ball. So I like that call quite a bit there. This is probably the most expensive one on my list here. And there's good reason for it. He's played really, really well this season. He's really, truly established himself as the lead back in this offense. And the nice part is you're going to be able to hold on to him a little bit longer than some of the other names that I have on my list. But it's DeAndre Swift. He's been playing really well. He just seems to be a hand and glove fit for that offense. If you're willing to give up a first round pick and maybe even a little bit plus, I think he's the type of guy that can elevate your RB2 spot from, let's hope we make it work, to, dang, I've got an RB1 now in my RB2 spot. His last couple games of the season too, he has Seattle, which is middle of the road in the week 15, so the first round of the playoffs. Then in the semis, the New York Giants, the 5th easiest against running backs, and then Arizona, the 7th easiest. So really, really soft playoff schedule. So a team or a guy that you can add to your team and then is going to be an absolute difference maker moving forward. So this is the one I'm paying up for a little bit, but I think it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and yeah, I think he has the potential to, if your contending window is still opening or on the earlier part of it, I think that's a home run right there, because you get him for this year. He's producing really well. You know, he might help you get to and win a championship, but he might do it for the next 2 years or so too. And
Correct.
that is a huge, you know, a huge asset to have. And if you can pay, you know, a first and maybe like a third or maybe a first and a second, I don't know, like that's about as rich as I would pay. I have him on one team that I was trying to sell, and now suddenly find myself like borderline playoff position. And so I don't know, but you know, I don't know that I would sell him for a first on its own. I probably would do it for a first and a second, but if you're looking to contend and you're really like, you know, maybe you just, like you said, maybe your RB2 position isn't super strong, and you can get him for, you know, a late pick in the first and second round. I don't think that's something that you should shy away from.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Who else you got for me, Tristan?
So the last two position or players are at positions that I think a lot of people are looking to fill, myself included. I have a very strong team that it's a two QB, two tight end league, and one of my quarterbacks is Joe Burrow, and one of my my tight ends is Mark Andrews. So I am like, you know, I naturally was like, well, this might help me out. Let me see what guys I can go target. The quarterback for, you know, for obviously just super flex or two QB leagues that I am looking to try to get is Sam Howell.
Mm.
I think, you know, I mean, quarterbacks are always going to be expensive in those leagues, but he might be slightly inexpensive compared to his production level. He's looked really good. I think he might get several, you know, he might be the starter there for the next few years. I think he's played his way into at least having a chance, even if they switch coaching staffs. Um, and yeah, so Sam Howell is kind of is a quarterback I'm looking at, and then we can get into the tight end after you kind of give your thoughts and who you have.
Yeah, Sam Howell's a really interesting one because you're right. He's played really well. The tricky part is the record doesn't necessarily reflect it at 4-7. They've got a tough matchup this week against the Dallas Cowboys. Could easily find themselves at 4-8, and they have a brand new, you know, front office and or ownership, I should say. And you would have to think guys like this are going to want to just do things their way. They're
Yeah.
going to probably clean house if things are going well. So is Sam Howell potentially a casualty of something like that? But it feels like he deserves the chance to continue being a starter at the NFL level.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
it's weird.
I think that even if he gets, you know, if he becomes a casualty and gets cut, or you know they trade him or whatever, I think that isn't necessarily awful for his fantasy value. I mean, it's obviously not good if he doesn't get picked up, but I don't think that's going to be the risk. I think like I know we kind of throw these two teams out there as fantasy people in general for quarterbacks, but if he went to like the Vikings next year,
Sure.
I would love that. If he was on the Falcons, you know, I think that he could be a lot better, you know, a big step up at not necessarily the biggest price tag for a team like that. So I think that you're totally accurate in that there's a big risk with, you know, a new regime coming in and saying, you know, we want our guys, but I don't know that that would be awful for his like fantasy production. So I think he would get picked up, and if not as like a bridge guy, with a chance at being a starter on a team.
Heavy T, who is the producer here, just said, did someone say Falcons? He's a big Atlanta Falcons fan. So it sounds like he would be pretty happy with that. I'm guessing, Heavy T, would you be happy if the Falcons picked up Sam Howell? I'm guessing it would have to be via trade, but who knows? We'll see what he says. We'll see if he's happy with that one or not. I with my or actually, yeah, this is back to me, right? Heavy T said he would be cool with that. He's high on Hal, so he likes it.
Nice.
All right, so this next one for me, I swear I'm not just pandering to who came and joined me tonight, but I know he's not sexy, but I'm going after a quarterback that I believe has won 5 straight games. I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, look, I get it. If you want to say he's not who he used to be, or, I'm nervous about him, or whatever you want to say, sure, I get it. But he's been very solid this season. He's gotten things done where he needs to get done. It's not always massive, massive fantasy numbers because they have been running the ball a little bit more lately. But touchdowns in every game. He's making plays. Like, he seems to be a guy that is just making things happen for this team. Right now, he's, like most people have him ranked dynasty wise somewhere around 15 to 20 in the dynasty landscape. And that's really, really affordable. And his schedule the rest of the way leading up to the playoffs, week, let's see, 13, Houston. They are currently number 5, easiest. Then they've got the Chargers, the easiest, the best matchup for quarterbacks in week 14 right before the playoffs. Week 15, Detroit at Detroit. So it's going to be inside. Number 9, pretty easy matchup. New England, which is a little bit tougher. And then you have the Chargers in the championship round, which once again, I mentioned the easiest matchup for the quarterback. So lots of fantasy points to be had. If there's ever a quarterback that's acquirable, it's a guy like Russell Wilson because he's not young. He's not super highly thought of in the dynasty community. So I think he's a guy that you could get fairly cheap compared to some of the older quarterbacks. Like I said, I'm not trying to just pander to you, Tristan, as a Denver Broncos fan, but as someone that watches him more intently than I do, what are your thoughts on Russell Wilson?
I like that one a lot. Actually, as you were just kind of going over it there, I'm trying to think of a trade offer that I can
There you
send to the
go.
Russell Wilson guy in my league that I just lost Burrow, because yeah, it's a great point. He's not going to lose his job. It would take something catastrophic, obviously aside from an injury, for him to not be the starter there both the rest of this year and really next year. I know that they can eat a ton of money and get out of his contract, but the way he's played over the last handful of weeks, I think they're pretty much married to Sean Payton and Russell Wilson for the next year and a half or 2.5 years at this point. So I love that. I think that he's not the Russell Wilson that he used to be. He never will be again. But at the price that you could probably get him at, I'm thinking up a trade for Russell Wilson right now because I could use some QB production outside of or after losing Burrow.
Nice, nice. All right, give me your last one. You said you had a tight end for me.
I
Go ahead and give it
do.
to me, Tristan.
This one's probably, well, the price has probably gone up in the last handful of weeks, but he's still probably pretty inexpensive, and that is Trey McBride.
Oh,
Um, I like. I was a little underwhelmed when he went to the Falcons, or not Falcons, excuse me, Cardinals, because Ertz was there, and just kind of he's going to have to overcome Zach Ertz to ever have fantasy relevance. And Cliff
sure.
Kingsbury, didn't want to throw to the tight end and all of that. But Jonathan Gannon loves to use 1 and 2 tight end sets and features the tight end a lot in his offense. And we've seen Trey McBride over the last month or so get more and more utilized in that offense and put up some solid numbers. And he's got the potential to be like at worst a startable tight end every week for the foreseeable future in a handful of years, and kind of with the upside to be one of these next not necessarily top tight ends, but the guys that you can rely on week in and week out, that aren't going to cost you a ton, but that you would much rather have than playing the tight end touchdown game where you're hoping they score a touchdown. Otherwise, it's less than 5 points.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like McBride a lot, and yeah, that's my target for anybody that maybe lost Andrews.
The price has definitely gone up, but I'll be honest, you I have a hard time finding many tight ends that I would rather have dynasty value wise, that I would rather have over Trey McBride right now.
Yeah.
Like maybe Sam Laporta, maybe Hawkinson. Like there's not many. There's
Right.
not
I
many.
mean, and I don't think he's going to cost you anywhere as much as going for one of those guys would.
Yeah.
Like, maybe, maybe I'm a little slow on the curve on that, but I really think that, if you were looking at it the other way and you had one of those guys, if you had Laporta, you could get, McBride and something big on top of it, I would imagine. Or, if you're asking just people who they prefer, I don't think it's going to be really a question on the majority of the top handful of tight ends who they would have. And it's not McBride. They'd pick whatever other tight end it is. And really, I think that he is kind of in a position where the buying window is probably nearly shut, where you're going to end up, if he continues to produce this way for a few more weeks, you're going to see his value kind of, like exponentially increase to kind of correct for where I think that it should be, kind of the way that dynasty, from the dynasty perspective, people look at him. But I don't think that if you're out of tight end and you're looking to make a trade, I think if you approach the McBride, the team that had McBride, you can probably get him for less than you might imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's a great looking young player, and how much he's being targeted by guys like Kyler Murray right now. He's man, he's a fun one. He's one that I definitely continue to have my eye on as the season progresses. Last but not least for me, I'm going after kind of old faithful here. He's somebody that always seems to be available, and he doesn't have the amazing, like I've talked about a lot of guys that have like really, really nice end of the season schedules. He's facing off against a lot of teams that are 17th, 18th, like just middle of the road type teams. So not bad matchups, but not good. But Mike Evans, Mike Evans, he's always acquirable. He has been for like 3 years. He's always viewed as this old, washed up guy. You can get him for a second round pick more than likely. And he's
Yep.
just going to be a really steady wide receiver 3 or flex play for your championship team. You might not even have to start him. You might have a team that is good enough where you don't need to start him. But man, I would much rather have him in my back pocket and be starting him in a championship game if somebody gets hurt or whatever than I would even somebody young that I like a Zay Flowers or somebody like
Yeah.
that. I
Uh,
like the steadiness of Mike Evans.
that was the only other name I had written down in case we needed one more, was Mike
Oh,
Evans. So
really?
I'm 100% with you on that. The cost is super low. The production is always there. Chris Godwin isn't a pillar of health. Not that you can project an injury, but if something happened, his value would go way up, or at least his production would go way up. But I do have, before we end it, I do have a tight end fun fact for you.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that, or do you know who Deron Bland is? The Cowboys defensive back.
Yeah, the guy with the 4 pick sixes.
Yes, so he has as many touchdowns on passes as Kyle Pitts has in his entire career,
Oh,
and that is in 1 year. And he's a defensive
oh,
back.
a
So I
defensive
saw
back.
that stat and I was like, wow, that's one you don't forget. Um, Kyle Pitts still hurts. Sorry to our resident Falcons fan, but Heavy T will hopefully have to forgive me for that. But it's not Kyle Pitts' fault. He still is a really good player. I just saw
Yeah.
that stat and was just dumbfounded that it could be true.
Oh, that hurts my heart so bad. Hurts my heart so bad because I have a decent amount of Kyle Pitts shares. Not a crazy amount, but I probably have like a 20% share if I had to guess, 15 to 20, somewhere in there. So I have some Kyle Pitts, and
Yeah,
I wish it was a little more useful.
it's probably been a painful couple of years for you, but hopefully better days are ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tristan, as always, Great talking with you. Appreciate all your insight, not just on the NFL side of things, but also on the college football side of things. You're fantastic with all of that information. One quick test for you, though.
Yeah.
All right. Tristan is the guy that can give you the college of almost any player where they play college. So I saved one for you. All right.
All right.
Demario Douglas, wide receiver. What's it?
Liberty.
Oh, man. You're good. You're good. It was a recent one, but it was so obscure that I was hoping maybe I'd catch you.
There's a few that'll get me, but I'm glad that it was, you put me on the spot, and thankfully it was a player that I knew. But there was can't remember who it was. There was somebody that got me not that long ago that I, vowed to remember forever, and then immediately forgot when I was asked again. So I've got some work to do. Okay.
I did have a backup one. Let's see how you do here. Jalen Guyton.
Ooh, that is a good question. I'm getting him confused with Darden because Darden was South Alabama. Jalen Guyton,
wide receiver for the Chargers.
Man, I think I'm wrong, but I'm gonna say Tennessee.
Incorrect. North Texas.
Yeah. North Texas. Oh wow. Yeah. Okay. Who is the Chargers had a Tennessee receiver? Oh, it was Josh Palmer. Palmer. Okay. That was the one I was thinking of. You got me. Well done.
All right. One for two though. You got yep. Douglas, Liberty. And of course we're only giving you obscure schools because no layups here.
That's fair. Shooting from deep.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you once again for joining us. Do you want to tell the good folks anything before you head out of here?
Yeah. If you're looking for a fantasy football logo for your fantasy football team, feel free to hit me up. I make custom logos. I made one for the Baskins Bengals, if you recall.
That's true. Yep.
So if anybody's interested in those, feel free to reach out to me. Or if you just want to talk about fantasy football, I'm more than happy to answer any questions or just talk about college pro football. And then hopefully, this time of year, we're starting to look at the rookie class. And this is my favorite time of the year, is getting ready and hopefully going to the combine and all that kind of stuff. So get ready, because it'll be rookie draft season before you know it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again, Tristan. We'll talk again soon, buddy.
Yeah, take care. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, man. All right, with that, let's go ahead and go to break. I've already seen the questions, but if you're not sure, not aware, get their trade questions in, your start sit questions. I'm going to get to all of those right after the break here on the Better Sports Network.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, but they let him be the quarterback for a long time, too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there. Mm-hmm. And you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. There's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl. And when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. He played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic, He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But
yeah.
Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game that they lost to Green Bay. But he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, like, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky, is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yards go.
All right, we are back. Heavy T loves playing that clip of him just absolutely bashing the Bears franchise. As a fan of the Browns, I can commiserate. It is it's a heartbreaker when you just can't figure out the quarterback position. All right, let's get to he says, I do love playing that one. All right, let's get to some of these trade questions, some of these start sits, all of that good stuff. LaRue, he says, I'm 11th in my league, but I can still make the playoffs. My starting Superflex team is Lawrence, Madison, Herbert, Diggs, Chase, Deontay Johnson, Higbee, Judy, Sanders, and Geno. Should I tank? At this point, if you're like, I can maybe sneak in the playoffs if everything's perfect, that's not the time that you want to make the push. You want to make the push when it's like, my team is so good, I don't see how they don't win. And, maybe you've had some bad luck, maybe not. But if you're looking at, you're like, I'm 11th out of 12th right now. And looking at that roster, yes, there's some good pieces like Chase and Diggs, but Lawrence hasn't had a great season. Geno's a very meh quarterback, and running back's going to be tough for you. So at this point, I do think it is more of a rebuild situation, not getting rid of your draft assets, kind of building through the draft, doing things that way. That would be my recommendation there. Is I would be looking to build up my team that way. Office Depot says, what's up, guys? PPR Superflex, Tank Dell or a mid-first for a rebuilder. Thank you and happy holidays. I cannot believe it's gotten to this point. And this is coming from a guy that liked Tank Dell. In my nerd score, I believe he was the 4th ranked wide receiver for me. If he wasn't 4th, he was 5th. He was very high in my nerd score, which is like my tape evaluation. He had a good score. But that being said, it's a mid-first in a class where it's looking like a really good class. And it's specifically at the quarterback position. So as much as I like Tank Dell, I can't believe I'm having to think this hard about it. But in a super flex league, I'm probably taking the mid-first. And it's tough. Heavy T says he wants Tank. Here's the reason I would not take Tank in that situation. One, I'm not convinced that the Houston Texans don't draft another receiver. I do think that there could be another guy that could take some targets away. 2, I do think they improve the running game to where they don't have to throw the ball as much as they're throwing. And especially if they improve their defense, they're not going to be behind as often. So I do think that they're going to do some things that will make this offense a little bit pass-centric. 3, if I'm in a position to potentially get a quarterback and a first-round quarterback, because right now there's rumored to be as many as 5 quarterbacks that are going to go in the first round. If you can get me a first-round quarterback, in a super flex league with how valuable the quarterback position is, I'm going to take the quarterback. So if that pick's going to be somewhere between like 5 and 7, I'm probably going to be taking the pick. It's close, crazy close. And if it's a late first, then it's Tank Dell for me. But otherwise, I'm going to go with the mid first. Really close. Robert, I apologize for not getting the Kid Rock reference. I am a little embarrassed. That was those were some good years. And I missed it. And I messed up. And I apologize. All right. Mr. OG Hippo says full PPR, pick 1. Romeo Dubs, Rashid Shaheed, or Demario Douglas. Thanks. Whew. All right, let me look at my rankings, what I have going on for this week. I know where my gut initially said, but I'm curious if my gut lined up with my rankings. Whew. All right, so right now, I currently have the order Demario Douglas, Dobbs, and then Shaheed. It's close for me. The problem is Dobbs is a little bit dependent on touchdowns, whereas I don't think Douglas is as dependent there. So in a PPR setting, he's probably a little bit safer. But if you need the upside against Detroit, which could be a decently high-scoring game, you could see a touchdown or even 2 touchdowns from Romeo Doubs. Actually, I think I'm talking myself into it. I think I'm going to go Doubs. Slightly ahead of Douglas, who's ahead of Shaheed. Really, really close, though. Uncle Ted. What's up, Uncle Teddy? He says Jeff Wilson Jr. could easily be the random league winner that pops up late every year. Absolutely. With the banged up backfield that we have right now in Miami, nothing is safe. Absolutely nothing is safe there. Jeff Wilson Jr. could easily work his way into a role. He's a guy that they trust around the goal line, so we could see some touchdowns there from a guy like him. So he's absolutely correct when he says he could be like the random guy that just pops up and wins the league for people. He could easily be that guy. So I do think that's a good call, Uncle Ted. We could see that from Jeff Wilson Jr. Raymond says, would you say that Kyle Pitts has been a bust so far? I think you'd have to. For fantasy football purposes. I think he has been a bust. Do I think that's his fault? No. Do I think he's a bad player? No, not at all. I think he's one of the most talented tight ends in football. But at the end of the day, you don't score fantasy points on how talented your players are. You score points on how many points they get, how many yards, how many touchdowns, how many receptions, things like that. And unfortunately, in this offense, he's just not getting that kind of workload. He should be, but he's just not. And so when we were talking about him in the same breath as Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, and he's going to be the next one of those guys, and dynasty value-wise, he's going to be absolute gold, take him towards the top of your drafts. We're taking him ahead of guys that are fantastic players. And looking back on it, it hasn't worked out that well. You would much rather have Travis Etienne, who you probably drafted behind Kyle Pitts. So when those types of things kind of pop in, you're like, yeah, he probably is a little bit of a bust at this point. All right. Cody B says start 3. Douglas, Drake London, Singletary, Flowers, and Sutton. I literally have Sutton and Drake London back to back. I will take London slightly ahead of him because of that Cleveland Browns defense. They're playing really, really well. So I'm going to put London ahead of him. I like Singletary quite a bit. So the way he's been playing has been fantastic. And Zay Flowers, especially against this Chargers team, this could be a really high-scoring affair. So I think I'm going to go Drake, Singletary, and Flowers, and I'm sitting Douglas and Sutton. Yeah. Yeah, I think Sutton. All right. Let's see. Cody B says, as a Packers fan, I enjoy it. Tank Dell is paired with Stroud for the next 4 years. He's a superstar. Look, he could be. He absolutely could be. He's been playing really, really well. It's just that opportunity to get that quarterback is the thing that's very, very enticing for me. Dynasty Price, terrific feedback. Thank you. I'm sharing this with potential trade partner. Mark says, Tylan Wallace, Brian Edwards, Sky Moore. Any hope for any of these guys? At this point, Tylan Wallace and Brian Edwards, no. I think we're at the point where almost zero. Sky Moore, I'm still holding out a tiniest little bit of hope for Sky Moore just because he is still in the offense. He's still being utilized on the first team. If something breaks the right way for him, he starts getting utilized a little bit more, he could still become a usable piece, we'll say. A usable piece. So I haven't completely given up on him, but the other two, yes, completely. The hope's gone. I realized I skipped one. Raymond Walker says, should I start Romeo Doubs or Rashee Rice? Rice has played really well lately, and he is absolutely moving up boards. They've got Vegas this week, team that they should handle fairly easily. And this is another situation where I have these guys back to back. So it is a true coin flip. Sometimes, I'm about to give you bad advice, which is weird. You're like, I'm coming here for good advice, Garret. Why are you giving me bad advice? I'm about to give you some bad advice, but it's fun advice. Sometimes I will start guys on Thanksgiving Day simply because I'm excited to watch them play and just sit down and just watch them. It's fun to have an extra rooting interest in those games. So is it good advice? That shouldn't be the reason, but I have done it. If it's close, if it's a coin flip like that, that's kind of how I make my determination. I think Rice is probably slightly safer, but I think Doubs has a much better chance of getting in the end zone. So I would say I'm going to go with Doubs, but it's really close. Cody, thank you. Cody said he does the same thing at times, and I'm not saying like, oh, I'm going to start Jared Goff over Patrick Mahomes because no, I'm not saying that. But if it's a coin flip, if it's a toss up, if I'm going to be able to get to sit and have a rooting interest in this player, I'd prefer that. All right, Vincent. Vincent says, what should I do with Gabe Davis? I keep on playing him. I hope he's going to have a huge game, and he has done nothing in recent weeks. Should I try to trade him? And if so, for what? Or hold? These are guys that are absolute landmines on your team. Guys that you cannot trust even 50% of the time. Even though you know that they're going to have these 3 touchdown games, they're absolute landmines. Trade them for you'll probably only get a late second, and I'm okay with that. I would absolutely take a late second because he does you no good on your bench, and you're going to start him at times and he's going to get you 3 points. And on top of that, I don't think he's with the Buffalo Bills next year, and who knows what team he goes to then. Are they going to utilize him the same way? Sure, maybe it's better, but more than likely, there's not many situations that are better than being the number 2 wide receiver for Josh Allen. So I'm moving him for late second, 2/3. He was a really hot name a couple years ago, but the consistency never really seems to be there for Gabe Davis. So Vincent, I'm sorry, my man, but I think it is time to move on. All right, let's go ahead and go to a break. When we come back, go ahead and put more questions in the chat. I'll get to all of them before we get Dennis Bennett here on the show. But we are going to go to break real quick. And I was going to say something else, but we'll wait. Let's wait for it. I'll see you guys here in a minute on the Better Sports Network.
Of the NHL games, I had a conversation with Coop A Fiasco yesterday when we were producing High Stakes, and he was talking about playing video games. And I, since he covers fantasy football, I said, "Hey, are you going to be getting the new Madden this year?" And he goes, "Yeah, I don't really play Madden. I play NHL." And that tells you, and it really does, that I do feel that the NHL game is better than Madden. I feel like Madden is overrated. The NHL game is so realistic. I don't know if you guys saw the trailer and all the new additions that they added to this game, but it really looks good. I tried finding all the games that I had of NHL, and I thought I had a lot. I only have 4 of them. And that's because I used to live with my my roommate and good friend who got me into hockey, and we would play most of it in his house. So he has most of the games, but I do got 21.
There you go.
I got
Okay.
NHL 18. We got Connor McDavid up there.
There you go.
NHL 12, I think, was the start of the new consoles for me. But the big one,
Okay.
the holy grail of NHL games, NHL 94
Oh, there
for
you
the
go.
Sega
I mean,
Genesis
there.
right there. Look at that. Look at that beautiful cover. Look at it. Looks like a VHS tape. That's how good this game was.
No, let me stop you right there. So people, VHS tape, if you don't know, it's this like rectangular black plastic with the magnetic tape on the inside. Tape's this big. You put it in something called the VCR. For a little while, there was something called Beta that didn't last too long.
Look at this cartridge. I mean, they're not cartridges anymore. They're either discs or those little memory cards. But man, that thing is thick, right? And
You don't
and
even
then
need a cartridge or a disc anymore. You can buy the digital version. You
digital
don't
version.
need any
And
of
then you
that.
got Ron Barr on the book. I mean, he used to
Oh,
be
yeah.
always in the intro telling you about the team and what was going to be happening in the game. So NHL 94 is by far my favorite game, sports game. I love that game.
All right, welcome back, Better Sports Network. I am your host, Garret Price. We are going to be bringing on the great Dennis Bennett here momentarily. But before we do, we're going to get to a couple more of your questions. But I got to tell you guys about Fantasy Alarm. That's right. Whoop, whoop. Fantasy Alarm. Fantasy Alarm. 7-day free trial of Fantasy Alarm's all-pro subscription. Head to fantasyalarm.com. You're not going to regret it. Look, it's free to try. It's a free trial. So go there, fantasyalarm.com. Try their all-pro subscription for 7 days. If you don't like it, you got something for free for 7 days. But if you do like it, sign up, support. Great platform. They've got all kinds of stuff at the different times of year, start sits and draft guides and stuff for DFS, all kinds of stuff there over at Fantasy Alarm. So head over there, fantasyalarm.com. That's fantasyalarm.com. I don't know why I made the whoop whoop sound. I feel like that's what alarms sound like. So I made the sound. But now I kind of regret making the sound. But maybe I shouldn't regret it. Okay, let's get into some more of your questions. Heavy T said that was definitely a sound, which is a statement of fact, but wasn't really he didn't really affirm me in this. So I'm a little self-conscious about my alarm sound now. My guy LaRue over here says some guys like Pitts and Bijan make me fear to tank. Stroud was the 106 in my Superflex Dynasty. It is so easy to make an error. I'm surprised he fell that far. For us, he was the number 3 guy for our Superflex leagues. We had him ahead of it went Bijan, Anthony Richardson, and then him for us. So I'm not ready to give up on Bijan at all, too. He's in a similar situation as Pitts. They both have just been Arthur Smith. Hopefully, actually, I'd be really interested to hear Tyler's thought on this. Would you be okay with the Falcons losing most of the rest of their games, not making the playoffs, if that means that they get rid of Arthur Smith in the offseason. He didn't take him any time at all to respond. Absolutely he would. Honestly, he said like 1,000,000,000%. I didn't count the zeros. It could be 10 million. I don't know. But that being said, he's absolutely all in for something like that. Honestly, the best thing for them, even though they're only one game out of the playoffs at this point, I feel like is to, if they finish the season with 4 wins, got a top 5 pick, and got a legitimate quarterback, I think that would be the best thing. And get a new offensive mind. Maybe who is it? Ben Johnson, Brian Johnson, something B Johnson from Detroit, their offensive coordinator. He's been fantastic. You get somebody like that in there, you get a good young quarterback. Things could be cooking. All right. Cody B says, I know we are far from draft season, but my 2 quarterback, 10-team PPR league, Dax, Mahomes, and Love. So 2 really good quarterbacks and, a decent third one. Gibbs, Brees, Adams, Dell, Flowers, London, Godwin, Pitts. I have 3 firsts, probably the 101, 105, and then 109 or 10. Who am I taking here? And he said, am I wrong for taking Marvin Harrison at the 101? I want him so bad. Okay. I'm never going to say that you are wrong for taking somebody that looks like a generational talent at a position. I don't think you're wrong for doing that. But do I think it is the most prudent move? I don't. That being said, the way I look at things is you always you draft the best player available, no matter what, depending on your format, obviously. But whatever the best player available is for your format, you draft that player. And then you trade for the positions that you need. So what I would be doing here is I would be looking at the guys at 102 and 103. And I would see how badly do they need a quarterback. And then I would trade down to 102 and 103. So that way, or 103, I mean. So that way I could acquire Marvin Harrison Jr., but I'm then gaining draft assets or players on top of it. Because people will pay a lot to come get a Caleb Williams. People will pay a lot to come get a Drake May. Now, sure, you always put yourself at risk of somebody leapfrogging you and getting Marvin Harrison Jr., but the saying you can never go broke making a profit really applies here. He said, I don't think I can get. So you think in your league, no matter what, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going at the 1-1 in a 2 quarterback league, not even a super flex league, in a 2 quarterback league. I'm curious to see what he says, but that's okay. He said, yeah, that's tough. So basically you're saying the only chance you have to get him is if you take him with the 101. Like I said, I don't think I would do that personally, but would I blame you? No, I would not blame you, but I don't think I personally would do that. Because remember, it's also a good wide receiver class, and you have a pretty decent wide receiver core. Not elite, but you have a pretty solid wide receiver core already. So you had a guy like Keon Coleman, Romo Dunes. There's a lot of guys in this class that are looking pretty solid. So I get it. And there are players that we really, really want. Neighbors looks great too. Yeah, there's like 5, 6, 7 receivers in this class that look just filthy, absolutely filthy. So it's going to be a fun wide receiver class, but I don't blame you at all for wanting Marvin Harrison Jr. And I don't think it's a bad move. I just don't think it's the most prudent move. If I tank, who should I target at 102? If that's the case, Superflex Dynasty, you're looking at one of those quarterbacks. You're looking at Caleb Williams. You're looking at Drake May. You're looking at one of those guys. if one of those really falls off for whatever reason, the guy we just talked about, Marvin Harrison Jr., I think is a great great player. But you're always targeting with one of those top picks. You're always targeting a quarterback unless it's just a really really bad quarterback class. So you're always targeting the quarterback in those situations. And then if you don't need a quarterback or you don't like that specific quarterback, whatever, trade back. I'm always fine trading back because then you're not taking a lesser valued player high. You're trading backward, getting the guy you initially wanted, but getting an additional draft capital or an additional player on top of it. So I'm a big fan of moving around your draft board to get guys you want, but not overpaying for guys that they're not worth that price tag. So that's the big thing for me is I don't want to overpay. I want to make sure that I'm taking the best players available on the board, regardless of position, because I can always make trades later. You only get a chance to draft there one time. You can always make as many trades as you want later to fill needs or wants. But you got to make sure you get the best player off the board in those rookie drafts. And so that's why I'm always there. Draft best player available and then trade for need later. All right. I think that wraps up our questions for now. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to put it in the chat. We are getting close to having Dennis Bennett on. So we are probably going to go to our last and final commercial break of the show. I know we do a few here, kind of congested, but we don't do any at the beginning. We don't do any at the end. We like to keep those conversations flowing between our first guest and our final guest, which is always the same guy, the legend, Dennis Bennett. So let's go ahead and go to break. When we come back, we'll talk to Dennis.
From the Hometown Hero series, Zach Parise.
That is a very nice card, and that's one I'm probably.
Oh, are we back? I'm just chilling on my phone. I think we might have had a hiccup on the commercial. Tyler, do we want to try a different one, or are we just gonna go through? All right, we're trying this again. We'll be back on the Better Sports Network.
From the Hometown Hero series, Zach Parise.
That is a very nice card, and that's one I'm probably have to organize a little trade ski with you because I would actually like that card.
You got downtown Newark in the background. I mean, Newark has never looked so good.
No, it is not.
We'll put that back up on the screen. I just want to have a penny sleeve ready, and yes, we can absolutely work out a little trade ski for that because that belongs in a Devil fans collection right there.
I'll trade you the Braden Schneider rookie card for it.
Done.
There we go. The first card for card trade on Rip and Rip history. And it was that easy.
It was that easy. That's because you know why? Because neither one of us are jerks. And it's the same thing when we try and do fantasy trades. Like we don't try and screw each other. We have conversations. If there's a fit, there's a fit. If it's not, it's not. We don't try and take the other one over the barrel. So there you go. In a penny sleeve, Hometown Hero, Zach Parise. He was among the league's most productive goal scorers in 06-07 and followed up with a terrific regular season with an even more impressive postseason. And then they talk about what he did in the first round series against Tampa Bay that year. So that's off to the side for you.
That's true. And, if this is it for his career, he had a hell of a career.
He did.
Hopefully he comes back one more year with the Islanders, but if he doesn't, hell of a run.
All right, welcome back. I don't think we have Dennis Bennett here quite yet. And we are. Oh, we do. There we are, Dennis Bennett. Dennis, how's it going, my man?
It is going fantastic. Getting ready to eat me some turkey tomorrow. Watch my Detroit Lions. All is right.
You know what? That was the first thing I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you what I asked Tristan this as well. What does Turkey Day look like for you? Do people coming to your place? You guys going somewhere? I know you got a kid in college now. I'm assuming he'll be there for that. Like, what's everything looking like for you tomorrow?
So we're having it at our house, but father-in-law is bringing the turkey. He lives a few miles away. Sister-in-law is coming down from Cleveland. She's bringing some stuff. My mom's coming over. So it's different people bringing stuff. So the workload isn't too big.
That's
My
nice.
job is just my wife will make a list in the morning because as soon as her eyes open in the morning, she's making lists, not just for tomorrow, but every day. That's just how her brain works. It's like
My wife is very similar in that.
and I'm like, gosh, I don't understand how you can't just relax. Like it's just I drink 3 or 4 monsters a day and my brain just doesn't work that hard. So, I'll get up, I'll help around the house, I'll do what needs to be done. People will come over. My brother is up from Dallas. And I'll put the football game on. We're going up. My 13-year-old wants to go up to Mansfield on Friday and watch the Hilliard Bradley Jaguars. They're in the state semifinals in District 1, I think. So they're going up against 2-time defending champion Lakewood St. Edward. So, but we're both teams are 12-1. Should be a good game.
All right, that sounds pretty fun.
It's the furthest Bradley's ever made it in the state playoffs. So,
I was fortunate enough to make the playoffs a few times in my high school football career. I remember we were a team that before I got to high school, about 2 years before I got there, we had a streak of, I want to say 33 straight losses.
Wow.
We were
then you turned it all around.
Terrible football school. My freshman year, I'm just, measly little freshman. And but I'm getting to do like special teams and stuff like that. And a little bit here at linebacker here and there, but mostly special teams, but enough to let her, So I'm excited getting to be out there. We end up going 8-2, making the playoffs, and we made it to the what would it be? The regional semifinal. So basically the Elite 8, the top 8 in the state that year. The following year we made the playoffs. The year after that we made the playoffs. 10-0 regular season and 9-1 regular season after that. And then my senior year, what's supposed to be the crowning jewel, the culmination of all of these years of hard football work, 3-7.
They knew you were leaving. No, we went to the game last Friday. It was at Historic Crew Stadium, the first soccer-only stadium ever built in the United States for the Columbus Crew.
I didn't know that.
Seats 27,000 people, was not full. We played Upper Arlington, the suburb next to us, one of the old money suburbs. 135-27 in double overtime, so to advance to the state semifinals. So our first what is it? District championship it was.
Okay.
It was cold, man.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Dennis, you mentioned your Detroit Lions. And before we get into this rookie draft here, let's talk about and in fact, if you want to send the link to Tyler, he can put it on the screen even while we're talking about it. But your Detroit Lions, they're playing on Thanksgiving tomorrow. They play every year at Thanksgiving. They have the first game of all of it. Typically, it's like, all right, who's going to beat the Lions this year and by how many? But things have flipped. The Lions are one of the best teams in football right now, and it's got to be a breath of fresh air to I mean, I'm sure you're always excited for the game, but to have a sense of hope going into the game.
It's very, very pleasant, to be honest. I did not love the Dan Campbell hiring. Okay. I'm taking my L. I didn't think it would. His style seemed a little too rah-rah collegey for me.
Sure.
I didn't know that. I felt like it wouldn't play well with, professional athletes. But they're buying into him, and they're buying into the system. You were talking earlier about, if the Falcons could lose, and get Ben Johnson. I don't want Ben Johnson to ever leave Detroit.
I know.
If I'm Dan Campbell, I'll be like, look, man, you can make more money than me. Just stay. It's all right. I would rather be a lower paid head coach with the best offensive coordinator winning championships. But that's just me. So Campbell came in and Brad Holmes came in. You know, they shipped off Matthew Stafford. I was happy for Stafford to win a championship. You know, he paid his dues in Detroit. I haven't got a chance. There's a documentary on Barry Sanders on Amazon Prime, I think. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. You know, he talks about why he walked away. I mean, as a lifelong Lions fan, it's probably just confirming what I already know, why he walked away. It was like, man, I can't take no more of this shit, is what it was. And but you know, Campbell come in and, you know, we're gonna bite kneecaps and all this, and I'm like, oh, this is so hokey. Man, the team's just fighting hard. Jared Goff is playing well, and yeah, there's the home road split thing, but
sure,
you know, that's kind of coming around. They've made some good draft picks. Maybe they made them out of order a little bit. You know, maybe their second rounder might have been their first round. It should have been their first rounder, and vice versa. But you know, their fourth rounder should have been their third rounder. But the guys are all playing, and at the end of the day, does it really matter what round they were drafted in if they're playing? They've got a strong offensive line. They're building up the defense, and David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are producing for the Lions, and they're producing for fantasy.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. Everyone there seems to be producing well. So it's fun to see this team be exciting, you know, fairly fast paced, high scoring. Like they're doing some fun things there. So it is fun to see that. Dennis, do you typically, obviously you watch the Lions game, do you try to catch all the games, or is it like it's tough to get all of them in with the family and everything? Or how much football do you usually get to watch?
So I have created the expectation that football is on all day and Dad is going to watch football. I love football. I'll engage with people and I'll be going around and my brother, who's up from Dallas, is a Cowboys fan. So that's the second game.
That's an easy one.
Everybody will be gone by the time the third game gets on, and my wife will be finally wore out and tired from, you know, the stress of having the family over.
Sure.
And so she'll be ready to go back and, you know, watch the Great British Baking Show or something. And so I kind of, it works out good for me. You know, we're going to eat at like 2:00 or so. And
sure.
You know, so yeah, the expectation is that I get to watch football. And at some point, you know, we're going to eat. I'm going to help, but I'm going to have the TV on. I'm going to be paying attention, especially when the Lions are on.
There you go. Life is good.
It is fantastic, man. I love being me.
There you go. All right. Well, let's get into the plan here. We touched earlier on contender buys. We're kind of going to the opposite end of the spectrum now. If you're one of those teams where, man, it just hasn't gone real well for my team so far, I'm already looking ahead to next year. Let's look at this round one of the Superflex. This is the first one we've done, correct, Dennis?
It is.
The first
Version
Superflex
1.0.
mock draft of the year. Dennis, break us down from the top here. We've got Caleb Williams going off the board first. That's been consensus for a long time. Now there is a little bit of question with it, though. Would this be your pick, and how confident are you in it?
If I were at 101, it would be my pick. Are there some things? I mean, overall, USC isn't a terrific team. Caleb Williams has shown a ton. He's got an elite skill set. He's got good size, great athleticism. I think he's going to be just fine as an NFL quarterback. He's been a starter for a while. It isn't like he's not like starting 12 games or 14 games like Mitch Trubisky. He's been the starter across two very high-profile programs, and he's put up good numbers. You know, he's had some difficulties with the defense. Lincoln Riley doesn't invest a lot of resources in the defense. We saw that at Oklahoma. We see it now at USC. He's going to outscore people. It'll be interesting once they get into the Big Ten to see how they hold up in the Big Ten. But Caleb Williams isn't going to be there for that. And if I'm picking at the 101, I'm going to take Caleb Williams, just like our guy Dan Toomey did.
Yeah, I think it's the right pick at this point. I know that his stock has fallen a little bit, but the traits that everyone has been talking about for years are still the same traits. He's got that Pat Mahomes type, good athlete, strong arm, ability to maneuver around the pocket, makes the big plays, can do everything you want. And from a dynasty perspective, quarterbacks in Superflex leagues are gold, absolute gold. But when you can add the running ability to the quarterback, that just elevates it a whole nother level. So as much as there are some other intriguing names and some Buckeyes at that, it's absolutely Caleb Williams at the 101 for me at this point as well. So let's go to the 102 here. The next pick off the board was not the quarterback, but in fact, the wide receiver. So we've been talking about that in the chat a little bit here. Marvin Harrison off the board at pick number 2. Dennis, would it be Drake May for you, or would it be the Ohio State product?
So I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, man. It would be Marvin Harrison for me.
Okay.
I would have to be in a situation where, and the hard thing is that wide receivers have elite wide receivers have a pretty long shelf life as well. And Marvin Harrison is, the best wide receiver to come out in how many years now? I mean, the dude is elite. He does everything effortlessly and well. He just is fantastic. I'm in a league where I had the 101 and the 103 is where I had it in. And last week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I won by 30 in a game where both of my quarterbacks were bench guys and weren't supposed to play. And it wouldn't have mattered if, Desmond Ridder ended up going back in the game because Heineke got hurt and he put up 9 points. But I won by 30 with no quarterbacks, and now I'm at the 102 and the 103. And I was going to take Harrison at the 101 and take whoever was left out of between May and Williams at the 103. I have Anthony Richardson as my other quarterback. And so I was perfectly fine going with Richardson and the leftover of May and Caleb Williams. Now the guy that's at 101, he has C.J. Stroud and Joe Burrow. Ooh. And I'm like, man, this dude's going to take Marvin Harrison. And I'm going to end up sitting here looking at 2 quarterbacks. We'll see how it goes. Maybe
you'll get a king's ransom though,
like,
if Caleb Williams is there at 102.
Yeah, but maybe he'll be like, I think I'm going to take a quarterback to go with Stroud and Burrow because I'll be able to trade one for value, more value than I can if I draft Harrison, and I'll end up getting Harrison and the leftover quarterback. But I couldn't believe it. I was at the 101 and I won by 30 with no quarterbacks. I was so pissed.
Yeah.
But yeah, Marvin Harrison. If somebody else was picking at 102 and took Drake May instead, I have no quibble with it.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. I'm still taking Drake May, and this is not a slight at all to Marvin Harrison Jr. I did a preliminary score for a nerd score. So this is not dependent on draft capital, landing spot, anything like, just simply on the tape. After his sophomore year, so had nothing to do with this season, just after a sophomore year, did a preliminary score for Marvin Harrison Jr. The highest score, the 2 highest scores we've ever had were actually the top 3 were Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, and CeeDee Lamb. 3 highest scores we've had. We've only been doing it for 4 years. This will be year 5. Those were the 3 highest scores we've ever had, or I've ever had, grading a player. The top one there was at 81. Marvin Harrison Jr. had an 84. So just to tell you how highly I think of him.
I'm not surprised, man. He is so good.
So good. So good. But that being said, the quarterback is still king in super flex leagues. And if Drake May looked like a he's gonna be okay, then I think that would change things. Drake May looks a lot like Justin Herbert. A lot like Justin Herbert. Big guy, strong arm, does everything the right way, all the prototypical tools you want, and he can run too. He's not just a pocket. Like, I wouldn't consider him a running quarterback, but it's not like he's a statue.
I mean, he rushed for almost 700 yards in 22.
Exactly. So Drake May, I think, is a fantastic player. And as much as I do really want Marvin Harrison Jr., and it's going to be tough for me when it gets on the clock and I actually have to click another name other than Marvin Harrison Jr., because I'm with you. He's incredible. He is absolutely incredible. At this point, at least publicly, I'm going to say Drake May at the 2 for me. But we can get to 3. Obviously, we've kind of been debating between these 2 guys. So I don't know that we need to go too in depth at 103 here, but what's just your kind of quick analysis of Drake May?
Yeah, I like the comp to Justin Herbert. He is a big guy with good mobility, and he can make all of the throws. He's got plenty of starts under his belt, and I think we've seen with guys like Brock Purdy, who was the last pick of the draft. Yes, being an elite athletic specimen and having elite traits is great, but there's something to be said for having a whole bunch of starts under your belt.
Yeah.
And May has had 2 years of being the starter. He backed up Sam Howell. He's been starting now for 2 years.
Yep.
And there's no substitute for actual experience. And I like I said, I don't have any quibble with taking Drake May. And to be fair, if this other guy, if he takes Caleb Williams at 1, I'll take Drake May at 2 and Harrison at 3, just to preserve what the draft order should be, even though I love Marvin Harrison. So
I like it just for appearance's sake.
Right.
We'll put it there. That's funny. Yeah. So I think we kind of both agree. And at this point for me, those 3 guys kind of seem to be a tier. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Okay. All right. So let's get to pick 4 then. Pick 4 is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. And we've got the LSU product, Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors, maybe not as big as some of the other guys in this class that we're going to be talking about, but man, has he produced this year for LSU. Your thoughts on Malik Neighbors here at 4?
Yeah, Neighbors looks fantastic. He's I think the biggest knock on him right now is that he's slightly under 190 pounds. Well, let's get him into the NFL and eating grown-up food with a nutritionist at 6'1". So if he gets up to 195, he's going to be plenty big enough. He's got 1,400 yards receiving and 12 touchdowns this year. I was a little surprised because Brock Bowers has been the 104. Everybody loves him, and he's a difference maker at tight end. I think we've seen with Kyle Pitts, though, I think we're a little bit scared of taking the tight ends that high now because of the Kyle Pitts experience. Now, Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid have been putting up monster numbers. Luke Musgrave's been playing really well. So I think we're going to see probably Brock Bowers end up being the 104 in maybe 50 or 60% of drafts. It feels like we're going to end up with people making need decisions as opposed to best player decisions after we get past that first tier. And so then that's why we might end up seeing guys like Malik Neighbors. But Neighbors has been a dynamic receiver, and it's all about points. We've gotten spoiled the last several years with receivers coming in and putting up numbers. I go all the way back to OBJ. It feels like that's where it started. Used to be prior to that, we were perfectly happy if they didn't produce big fantasy numbers until their second or third year. Now we're looking for these monster numbers in year one.
And even the NFL seems to, not just fantasy guys, but the NFL seems to be leaning that way too, where if a guy doesn't have a big year in his first year, or at least show some decent signs, by year 2 and for sure by year 3, they're buried. They're absolutely buried on the depth chart by that point. There's always exceptions to that rule, but it really seems like even the NFL has kind of moved into that. You've got to prove it to me now, not in the future, not later. We need to see that you're that guy now, or we're going to get somebody that is. Because the last few classes have just been so rich with wide receiver talent.
Yeah, last year's class was weird because they were all so small. This year's a bunch of big wide receivers coming in. It'll be interesting to see if
It's your kind of class, Dennis.
It is, man. I love the wide receivers in this class. And it's not like I'm always looking for 6'5" guys like Mike Evans, but give me 6'1" and 200 pounds at least.
Sure. Yeah, this is definitely the class for you. So let's get to pick 5. Malik Neighbors, stud player. Not a surprise to see him go there. Brock Bowers, you mentioned him. A little bit of an undersized tight end, but that's not a big deal in today's NFL because we don't really want him blocking. We just want him out there catching passes anyway. And he's been producing as a freshman. I mean, since his freshman year, he's been putting up numbers. So Brock Bowers, a really, really talented player in his own right. And I would be surprised to see him go much past the 105, 106 mark in rookie drafts.
Yeah, with Bowers, it's going to be interesting where he lands in the NFL. And do fantasy managers believe in the offensive scheme where he lands? Because I know, like with Dalton Kincaid, there was a lot of, well, he's going to be the slot guy. Who was it? McDermott. Oh, we're not going to run 12 personnel. We're running 11.5 personnel with Kincaid. And Kincaid is starting to, even before Dalton Knox got injured, you started to see a lot of that. And now after Knox's injury, they're sliding, who's the cat? Quentin Morris, I think, in as that big blocking kind of tight end. And they're letting Kincaid continue to be the pass catcher. And he's kind of the number 2 target on that team.
Yeah.
So if Bowers lands somewhere where he doesn't have to worry about it, where he can be Mark Andrews, where he can be Dalton Kincaid, if he lands in a spot where he's supposed to be Sam Laporta or George Kittle, I think that's going to be more difficult for Bowers because he is only 230 pounds.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. He is a really talented player. I'm curious to see how things play out for him. At 106, let's see who we got 106 in this draft. And this guy's stock has fallen a little bit this year. He's not played poorly, I would say, but just he's missed a lot of time due to injury. Yeah, exactly. He's just not played much. Missed a decent amount of time due to injury, coming back a little slow. He looked good early in the year, but went from a guy that seemed like the lock to be the number 2 receiver in this class to there's some that might not even have him in the top 5 at this point.
Yeah, and I think part of it is much like Jackson Smith and Jigba, there's a little bit of a perception or belief that he doesn't have that long speed. He doesn't. He's a good separator because of how good a route runner he is, but he isn't going to run away from people. We'll see how that goes, but he's got good size at 6'1" and 203, and he is a phenomenal route runner. So I think he can be somebody in that Amon-Ra St. Brown mold, where, the Keenan Allen mold, where it's not about can he run away from people. He'll get the occasional 50-yarder, but, he's a guy that's going to be racking up 20, 25-yarders because of his ability to separate in route running. But I agree. I think he's going to end up dropping down. Him and I think the next pick as well are a couple guys that I think are starting to fall down a little bit. And Ibuka, it really comes down to, Ryan Day holding him out maybe an extra week or two. making sure he's got all of the bullets in his chamber for Saturday.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think this is going to be a big week for guys like Emeka Mbuka and Travion Henderson, guys that their draft stock
Henderson's
is
looks so good.
Yeah, he's looked fantastic the past couple weeks. Looks like his old self that he looked like as a freshman. So those are two guys that I think a lot of NFL scouts are going to be watching. What do these two guys do? Because they know Harrison's a stud. But what do these two guys do against the best defense that they're going to see in college football in Michigan? So that'll be a really interesting one to see. At 107, you said that this guy's fallen down boards a little bit as well. That's Braylon Allen, big physical running back. And honestly, overall,
reminds me of you out there.
That's right. That's right. Trucking kids. So Braylon Allen, big boy, 6'2", 238. Maybe we should put my highlight film on here sometime. What do you think, Dennis?
I think that'd be great, man.
Little Garret Price highlight tape. But he's had an interesting year. Not the stock for the running back position as a whole has dropped, and this guy's maybe the poster child for it. So a little surprising to see him as the first running back off the board, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, Keith Ensminger, the Sming Dynasty, is bought into like what Allen brings to the table, which is that power. We don't expect a ton of pass catching out of Wisconsin backs historically, but part of what's happened this year with the change in coaching with Luke Fickell, the offense has changed. It isn't what it was even last year. And Allen is still averaging the same amount, basically the same per carry average. He's got one less touchdown in 10 games than he had in 12 games last year. So he should surpass that. But the offense is different. He's what, about 80 carries less than he had last year sitting right now. So for me, I like him. He's gonna have to go somewhere where they believe like he's the perfect successor to Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Just that's kind of what he is Derrick Henry light. Brandon Jacobs kind of back, 6'2", 238 pounds. He's got decent speed. He's young. He's very young. I think he was like a 17-year-old freshman at Wisconsin, and he's been the starter for 3 years. But I think his style is a little bit old school, and he's going to have to land in the right spot.
Yeah, I do worry a little bit that he's going to end up more like A.J. Dillon than he is Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
that's what I worry about a little bit. We'll see. And I have not done deep into his tape yet to give a strong opinion one way or another. But that's just my hesitation there, is that maybe he's not,
lacks the explosiveness.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it.
Got good build-up speed.
Yep. Looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane, that kind of thing. All right, let's go to the next pick here in the draft, and we had the quarterback Michael Penix Jr. He's looked really, really good the past few weeks, and I get it. He's an older guy, but it's a little easier to swallow at quarterback because of the longevity of the position. If a guy's 23, 24, that's pretty concerning at running back when it's already like, he's only got a few years. But at quarterback, we expect these guys to play until at least 35. So not really the end of the world for a guy like Michael Penix. But it does beg the question, is he dominating because he's an NFL-aged player as opposed to a college-aged player?
So, another older quarterback that came into the league, now not a lot older, but maybe 23, pushing 24. So maybe a year younger than Penix when he came in, was Joe Burrow.
Yep.
Burrow was at Ohio State for 2 or 3 years before he went down to LSU. And his first year at LSU, he wasn't great. Second year at LSU, he tore it up. Maybe the best college football season ever for a quarterback. So I'm like you. I'm not overly concerned with Penix's age. I think he's going to get very good draft capital. And he's got good size. He throws a nice ball. I'm probably a little more concerned than with his knee injury history than I am his age. So he's had a couple injuries, and this is his 6th year of college. So between an injury year and the pandemic year, he's having a great year, and you got to give him respect for that. I think he's going to be fine as a prospect and as an NFL quarterback. And Lord knows we need some good ones.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm slowly hopping on board the Penix train, but it is definitely a little concerning, all the injury history with all the quarterbacks that we've had go down this year. Another one that seems very susceptible to injury is a bit on the concerning side, if I'm being honest. But as far as this game goes, it looks absolutely legitimate. He looks like he could be a very good quarterback in the NFL, especially for fantasy with his athletic ability. All right, 109. Next guy, we got another quarterback on the board here. Now, I'm not convinced he's coming out.
Right.
I have a feeling that he's going to stay another year. Comments have kind of alluded to that. We'll have to see. But for the moment, let's say that Quinn Ewers does come out. Do you like this spot for him? Has he shown you enough at the college level?
For me, I think Ewers is probably more in my QB 5-6 range as opposed to QB 4. So I'd probably have him down a couple more spots. I think he's shown some moxie. He's got decent size. His recent diet, he's a little bit thin, so he's got to put a little more beef back on, I think. But he's played okay. He's completing 70% of his passes this year. I just want to see him have like an elite college year.
Yeah.
Give me 4,000 yards. Give me 30 touchdowns. Texas has weapons. We shouldn't be, and granted he's missed a couple games with injuries, but we shouldn't be looking at, a 9-game season and thinking, oh, well, but again, he's another one. He went to college at 17 at Ohio State. And he's listed as a sophomore, but he spent his freshman year at OSU early, so that's why he can. He's draft eligible. But I agree. I think we'll probably hear relatively early that he's going back. At least I hope so. So we can get him kind of out of the draft mix here, and he doesn't keep skewing our mock drafts.
Yeah, I think Ewers and Sanders. I think both those guys are going to come back another year, clean up their game, refine some things, and plus, if you're a guy like him, you want a shot at the top quarterback. I don't want to be quarterback 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
I want to be quarterback 1. That's it. That's what he was coming out of high school. He was quarterback 1, and I think that's what he wants to be. And right now, I don't think that there's anybody, unless I'm forgetting somebody, I don't think we have any prospects that were like, yeah, this guy's a lock for the top quarterback like we did this year with May and Williams. I don't think we have anybody like that in the 25 class that I can think of. There's some decent players, but nobody led to that level.
Yeah, they need to. We're going to have to see next year. We're going to have to see him step up and show that. I think Ewers and Sanders are 2 great examples of guys we're going to be looking at for that.
Absolutely. All right, let's move to 110. We're getting into the bottom of the draft here, and we get Michael Penix's favorite target, Rome Odunze. Maybe not the fastest wide receiver in this class, but man, he is big, he is physical, and he's a really good route runner. Like, finds ways to get open, pretty crafty with the way that he plays the game. I like what I've seen so far out of Odunze. You like the pick here at 110?
I love the pick of Rome Odunze. Drafted him last year in my Devi draft. Sitting right now on Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, and Braylon Allen on my Devi squad. So, and Cade Klubnik. We'll see if Klubnik can take the next step down there in Clemson. But, Odunze's averaging over 18 yards per catch. So he's getting downfield and making big plays. He's a baller. He fights for the ball. He seems to catch the ball well in traffic. He's got good size. I like what Odunze brings to the table.
I'm with you. I have him in a couple leagues. I actually just traded him in one league, which broke my heart. Didn't want to, but I'm a contender. And could use a tight end, so I traded him and something else small for George Kittle. So
Yeah, I had somebody try to get him from me in that league, and I was like, nah, I'm good.
I'll hold on. Yeah, I can't blame you, but it was one of those situations where I have it's a pretty stacked team. I have like 4 or 5 running backs that are all in running back 1 range. Got a lot of good young receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jamar Chase, DK Metcalf, like a lot of guys that he's going to have a hard time cracking those players anytime soon. So felt like I should do it to try to win it all, but man, it hurt my heart to get rid of him because I like this kid quite a bit. Let's go to pick 11 here. Second to last pick, the penultimate pick in this 2024 rookie draft. Mahai Luke, how's it going, homie? Glad you're here. Got the running back Travion Henderson. We mentioned him a little bit earlier in the draft. Braylon Allen was the first guy off the board. Travion Henderson here, the second one. Seemed pretty obvious to be the top guy a little while ago, but he falls quite a bit here. And look who got him. It was you.
It was me, man. If I can get Travion Henderson at the 111 in rookie drafts, I am going to be. So Henderson, he fell out of favor a little bit because he missed games.
Yeah.
And it's been wild. You watch, he came back and he has played so well. It's like he's made Ohio State's offensive line look like they can run block. Because while he was out, they could not run block. I mean, Chip Trainum and Mayan Williams and Dallin Hayden were not getting it done. And then Henderson comes back, man, and he's racking up 125, 150. He's taking passes 65 yards. He broke off a 75-yarder. He's just crushing it. And it's like, his measurements say he's 5'10", 210. I just pray he's like at least 5'10". Give me 5. Don't give me 5'9" and 3/4. But when I look at him, I'm like, man, that dude's gonna measure 5'9". He's gonna measure 5'9" and 206, and then he's gonna get dinged for his size. But man, I mean, he's catching passes. He's caught 16 passes. He looks phenomenal.
Hey, if he gets dinged for him size, then he moves down draft boards a little bit and we get him a little cheaper. That's all that means.
I'll take that discount, man. He looks good.
Yeah, he looks every bit the top back in the class at this point. And granted, I'm saying the top back in the class in a class that we're saying is probably pretty weak at the running back position. Luke Wu will recap this first round here right after the last guy that we talk about here at pick 112. Dennis, we've got the transfer from Michigan State, the Florida State wide receiver, 6'4", Keon Coleman. What are your thoughts on this bad mamma jamma?
Dude, he has put up some of the most spectacular catches this year. It's hard to really, when you watch him play, it's like, oh, he's a big dude. He moves pretty well. He's got decent speed. But, man, some of the catches he's made have been just phenomenal. It's acrobatic. He's making hard catches look easy. Now, as long as he doesn't make easy catches look hard at the next level, I'm down for it. Keep making those big plays, man.
Yeah, he looks legit. He looks absolutely legit.
I'm going to be interested to see, like, how does he do over the next couple weeks without Jordan Travis?
Yeah, it'll be interesting with subpar quarterback play, although poor guy, that's what he had to deal with for most of his career while he was up at Michigan State. He's going to get that again without Jordan Travis, who pretty nasty looking ankle injury there. He was kind of one of those guys that maybe we'll see as like a day 2 quarterback that might get a shot and that kind of thing. We'll see how this injury kind of sets him back a little bit. So hoping the best for him. But I was surprised to see Coleman fall this far. I thought that he was going to be within the top 8 picks. So to see him fall all the way to pick 12 seems like a really good value in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought it was great value. And, it's been, about 10 days since this draft published. So we'll see when we do the next one how things start to shake out. Right now we're spacing it out a little bit. The end of the season's coming.
Sure.
While we've observed the college season, our guys aren't digging in deep right now.
Sure.
We're trying to get through the rest of the fantasy season, win some championships. I already reached out to Tristan and was like, "Hey, man, you're gonna need to start thinking about that rookie profile list because we start rolling out rookie profiles by the end of January.
Yep.
We don't need to wait till everybody declares because seniors are coming out and we can do them."
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's scroll back up to the top. Let's recap it real quick. Tell you everybody that we had in this first mock draft of the 2024 class. We started off with Caleb Williams at 101, 102, Marvin Harrison Jr. At 103, we had the quarterback Drake May off the board. At 104, it was not Brock Bowers that went, but Malik Neighbors, wide receiver for LSU. Then at 105, we did have Brock Bowers off the board. At 106, who did we have at 106? Emeka Ibuka, wide receiver from Ohio State. Braylon Allen, the first running back off the board at 107. At 108, we had Michael Penix Jr., quarterback from Washington. Quinn Ewers at 109. And then at 110, at 110, we had Rome Odunze, wide receiver. He got paired up with Michael Penix Jr. At 111, Travion Henderson. And at 112, Keon Coleman. So that wraps up the first mock draft of the year. Dennis, this was a fun show, fun one to do right before Turkey Day. Anything you want to tell the good folks out there before we head out for the night?
Well, with this extra games this week, we had the script for fantasy success for the Turkey Day games and the first ever Black Friday game. So if you're interested in what we expect the game script to be and the players, go check that out over at the dynastynerds.com website.
Love it. Love it. And you can find me over at Dynasty Price on the Twitter or on the X, whatever you want to call it. You can find me there. All kinds of good stuff that we're doing there. On dynastynerds.com, we've got the podcast coming out every week. Been a little behind on the Talking Dynasty podcast, but that's going to be coming to the Dynasty Nerds feed here in the very near future. So both episodes will be on the exact same feed, both the Talking Dynasty and the Dynasty Nerds show on the same podcast feed. So you won't have to subscribe to both. You'll be able to find us nice and easily on the same feed there. So with that, I think that's everything. I wanted to say one last thing before we get out of here. We, unfortunately, this show is going to be wrapping up here. We've got 2 more weeks here on BSN, and then we will be done with this. But Dynasty Nerds, we are going to be coming out with a few other things up our sleeve. So it won't be with the Better Sports Network, but I did want to let you guys know this will be the last couple shows that we have here on the Better Sports Network. So for myself, for Heavy T behind the scenes, for Dennis Bennett, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Ciao, baby.